This is for the guys. This is how to stay grounded during conflict. More specifically, how do you remain in your masculine in conflict? How do you keep boundaries? How do you take that heat from your women, whether it's valid or you believe it not to be, and stay grounded and not allow it to shake you? You know, the last thing we want to do is yell at our women. I really don't see that as being useful. I'm guilty of this. You know, in the past, I've been more of a boy. I've either gone to two extremes. One is, you know, lashing back, which I think is childish and wrong, or getting cold and distant, which doesn't really fix anything. So what do I believe the middle ground is, the high road? Well, I think that is being present, being grounded. What does that look like? Well, that looks like you can take some shit, you could take some heat, and you stay with your truth, right? You don't placate when you know you're in the right. And you don't get defensive where we're no longer self-reflecting and analyzing and seeing where we could do better, right? When we're defensive, we're usually, you know, attacking back. We're usually deflecting, right? So there's a middle ground in that, right? We don't want to be just placating them and saying, oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry to resolve the conflict. And we're also not being super guard and defensive where we're not taking any accountability. The middle ground is you listen to everything, you take what's true, you disregard what's not true. I'm not someone that likes arguments. I grew up where there was arguments in the household. And because of that, I'm not really a fan of it. I'm not really a fan of yelling, of getting heated. And so that means that perhaps I've swayed to dissociating, getting a little bit cold in those heated moments. But now I'm trying to really step into it when there's passion, heat, whatever you want to call it, coming out, to just take a deep breath and be okay with it. And this is something I also allow into the rest of my life, where in moments of discomfort, of stress, where maybe in the past I would panic, instead, I just take deep breaths. I just allow what is necessary, what needs to happen, meaning I let the other person say their truth, say what they need to say. And I just hold my own, like, okay, I'm hearing you, I'm listening. Of course, my brain is saying, fire back, say that insult. Oh, but actually, rebuttal there, but. No, just listen to all. This is also a good strategy for conflict resolution. Maybe it's in business. You hear all the many arguments, all the many complaints, and you find the one commonality. And this is the same for relationships. If your girl's nagging at you about little things, it's always about a big overarching theme. I've seen this time and time again in my personal life and in the life of others, other men that have shared with me. We as men often are very practical, looking at the specific things they say. We listen to women, we trust women, which is nice. But there's always something bigger or overarching that is leading to them acting or saying certain things. So we need to not ignore what they're saying and not believe it at face value, but to look past it. What is the big picture, right? Because if they tell you three different things, oh, you didn't clean the floor. Oh, I thought you were going to XYZ, go and do this thing. What they're really saying is you say you're going to do one thing and you do the other, right? You give your word, but then I don't see the action, I don't see the follow through. So to really address the big picture, to put them at ease of the main issue, is going to help quell all the little different things. Another huge idea that I've come to the realization of is being true to yourself. Be true to yourself. What does that mean? It means having strict boundaries, meaning here's what I can do, here's what I'm willing to offer, to throw away any hidden expectations and say, this is where I'm at, this is what I agreed to. when someone is asking you for something, to have a frank conversation, very clear if this is your significant other. Here is what's important to me. Here's what I can and cannot do. That is healthy communication. That is staying grounded. That is being in your masculine. If you're trying to be the authority of your own life, you need to have a backbone. You need to have a spine, what you can and cannot do and offer to the other person. But it needs to be said in a way that acknowledges their needs, right? Because they're coming to you and ask you for something for a reason, right? They're maybe asking you to communicate more, not because they're naggy and annoying, but because they want to feel your love, right? How could we be upset that someone wants to feel our love? That is such a beautiful thing. Yeah, sometimes we take it as, oh, they're just being annoying. They're constantly needy. But it's a beautiful thing that they need or want. And so how can we set our boundaries while also acknowledging and respecting their needs, right? That is a high level of a emotional and communicative capacity in a relationship, which honestly is a way rarer, I realize, than it should be for many couples. Definitely old school couples. I'm talking about, our parents' generation, grandparents. I don't know if they really have this emotional awareness. Sorry, guys, I don't see it. And I think that our generation, as 20, 30-year-olds, we're tired of the old school way of communicating with the many hitting expectations and bickering that comes along with it, personally at least. And we want what's better, which is beautiful communication, clearly understanding one another. As a man, I really see that you're going to have to take a little bit more heat than you'd like. It's kind of par for the course. And the beautiful thing is when you can take that criticism and not be hurt, not question yourself, know where you're at. If it's wrong, if it's not accurate of where you're at, to move on, to address it, to have your boundaries with your partner. This also can show up outside of relationship and work and business. Having clear boundaries, sticking to your beliefs, to your self, right? Having self-respect where you don't take shit, but also you don't need to deal it, right? You're fine if someone's coming at you with some hate. Maybe it's because there's something going on in their life and they're not at that emotional capacity that you're at. That's okay. Like taking the higher ground is being masculine, is being grounded, right? Not needing to punch back for the sake of it. That is a true, embodiment of the king, where he doesn't need revenge. If he knows he's right, he knows he's right. And he's able to keep his truth. He doesn't need to prove it. There are times, perhaps, sure, that you may publicly need to, but most of the time, you can just smile and say, sure, whatever you say, buddy. So being grounded and in your masculine and in conflict looks like, one, you are not getting overly defensive, right? You're not trying to attack back every time someone criticizes you and make them go on the defensive. You're also not trying to overly placate and lose your truth for the sake of conflict resolution, but to stay present where you are, right? Stay grounded. I know where I'm at. I know what's happened. I know what I've done. I know what I haven't done, to really be in it, but to also consider everything you're hearing. And number two is to be very clear about your boundaries, what you're willing to give, what you expect to receive, so that there is nothing in the air that's unknown. It's laid out. You've set it clear and you've acknowledged the other person's needs and desires. That is king energy shit. That's you being a man. That's you being really grounded, okay with heat coming your way, because that's inevitable to life, right? Without any stress, there will be no growth. You need tension. You need a little bit of conflict in order to be tested, to grow, which is important. If you don't like that, unfortunately, there's no way around it unless you avoid conflict. You will never be at your fullest potential, and you'll never be tested to know that you're at your fullest potential. So conflict is a beautiful thing in relationships. As much as it sucks at times, it is a beautiful thing that is telling you to become greater and greater.